Suddenly, my parents appeared out of the blue, making a racket at the car windows, asking if someone had needed a favor. "Dad, what's this about? You're always so hard-headed." "Just chill and persuade Ethan to step aside. Tell him to announce he's stepping down because his dad's the better choice for shaman," they insisted. It turned out, my parents and Ethan's folks had joined forces, aiming to dethrone Ethan from his destined role as the future shaman. Shockingly, I saw my mom with something that looked like a crowbar, raising it high before smashing it through the window, shattering glass everywhere with a thunderous crash. They later claimed to have found a suicide note in Ethan's car, which supposedly went off a cliff. This left me in utter disbelief. But then, about a week after they found the car, an envelope was delivered to me by courier, marked with a specific delivery date. Panicking, I opened it to find a letter and a key. "Read this without letting our parents know." Ethan's message read. It was clear he had written this as a precaution, should anything happen to him. "If I'm still here when you get this, just laugh it off and return it. But if I'm gone, Camila, use what's in this locker and head straight to my uncle's place." My friend Eleanor and I understood the gravity of the situation. We packed essentials and dashed to my uncle-in-law's, seeking refuge for us and our children, and to expose our parents' actions. My name is Camila, and at 30 years old, my life took an unexpected turn. Up until a week ago, I could have said I was just a regular mom. Now, I'm a widow with 2 kids. Everyone's been saying that Ethan probably took his own life after his car was found wrecked at the bottom of a cliff, with a supposed suicide note. But that doesn't add up to me. Ethan had no reason to end his life, certainly not on his own. Ethan and I first crossed paths while working at a housekeeping hotel, connected to a real estate business, a dream job for me ever since I was captivated by a grand hotel visit as a child. My passion for the tourism industry led me to choose a relevant university program and work part-time at a hotel during my studies, eventually securing a position at the resort of my dreams. The place was notorious for its rigorous training. I almost quit early on. The only thing that kept me going was a senior colleague, who turned out to be none other than Ethan. After supporting each other through tough times, we dated for 3 years before getting married. It came as a surprise when I learned Ethan was actually the nephew of the chairman of the real estate group we worked for, and it was expected he'd join the higher ranks of the business eventually. Yet at that time, he was still in the midst of his training. After we got married, Ethan transitioned from working at the housekeeping hotel to joining the family's real estate business, where he began to make his presence known around his uncle, the chairman. Initially, this business was a small, local real estate venture that saw significant growth after the war. The group's expansion, particularly remarkable during the bubble economy era, was largely attributed to the current chairman, the second leader since the group's foundation. His strategic decisions helped the company withstand the burst of the bubble economy, and later, the venture into resort development also saw steady progress. However, complications arose when the chairman fell ill last year. With no children of his own, he chose Ethan as his successor, a decision that unfortunately seemed to hasten Ethan's untimely demise. I was in disbelief when the police informed me of Ethan's passing. During this difficult time, Ethan's parents incessantly called, their tone attempting to simplify the gravity of our loss with remarks like something terrible has happened to Ethan, hasn't it? And it's going to be hard on your own, Camila. Why don't you come stay with us? With Ethan gone, things will be financially tough, won't they? Their words meant to seem caring, felt hollow and infuriating. I told them I couldn't think about the future at that moment and ended the call, pondering what steps to take next. My interactions with Ethan's parents had been limited. I had only met them twice, once when we announced our marriage and then at our wedding. They hadn't been present for any significant milestones in our lives, including the births of our son and daughter. Ethan had always maintained a distance from his parents, describing them as people who lacked initiative and depended on the success of others. Despite holding titles within the Wilson Real Estate Group, they were effectively sidelined to prevent their interference, given tasks without substance to keep them occupied, often under the pretense of business inspections. Ethan's disdain for his parents' lack of ambition contrasted with his relationship with his sister, Eleanor, and her husband, Jacob, who was not involved in the family business. Ethan and Jacob shared a close bond, often spending time together whenever Jacob was in town for work, much to Eleanor's mock jealousy. Despite the complex family dynamics, Eleanor and Ethan remained supportive of each other, both understanding the challenges of dealing with their parents. Eleanor lived a different life, married outside of the family business, and resided in the city with her husband. She often remarked on the stark difference in how their parents viewed her and Ethan. While she could distance herself from the family's issues, Ethan, being involved in the business, bore the brunt of their parents' resentment and expectations. This created a divide within the family, with Ethan and Eleanor navigating their paths while dealing with the legacy and expectations of the Wilson Real Estate Group. Indeed, my relationship with my parents hasn't always been smooth. As a child, being their only daughter, I felt cherished to a certain extent. However, their true intentions surfaced during my college years when they suddenly demanded I drop out and return home. The reason? A marriage proposal from the son of a well-known local family, a proposal they were eager to push me into for their own gain. Their expectations shattered my perception of them. It became clear they were raising me with the hope of benefiting from me someday. When I stood my ground and refused to return, they cut off financial support for my tuition and living expenses, thinking it would force my hand. But I didn't give in. Determined to continue my education, I sought advice from a professor and explored every possible avenue to stay in college. Scholarships took care of my tuition, but living expenses were a bigger challenge. I moved to a cheaper apartment, sold what I didn't need, and balanced my studies with multiple part-time jobs. My life became a cycle of work, study, and brief rests, a routine that eventually led to my meeting Ethan and finding employment. When Ethan and I married, my parents surprisingly expressed joy, contrasting sharply with their earlier actions. Ethan, suspecting they were pleased only because of his ties to the affluent real estate family he belonged to, initially doubted their motives. Their true colors showed again at the births of our children, Wyatt and Kinsley. My parents' comments about our children ensuring our future and, by extension, theirs revealed their ongoing expectations to benefit from our lives. Ethan's uneasy reaction mirrored my own. We were both all too familiar with the weight of parental expectations. Despite these challenges, Ethan and I navigated our way through. His income allowed us the option of hiring help, but without trustworthy family members, we chose to manage independently. Our experience with our parents, both sets equally opportunistic, taught us to be cautious. It fortified our resolve to raise our children in a loving, self-sufficient home, far from the manipulative tactics we'd both endured. Last year brought unexpected turmoil when the chairman, usually a picture of health in his 70s and an advocate for regular exercise, suffered a health scare. Despite his good health habits and no warning signs, a dormant issue arose. A blood clot in his brain, stemming from a head injury in his youth, suddenly became a critical threat. Emergency surgery was necessary, and while it was successful with a positive prognosis, the incident shook the foundation of the company. It revealed a glaring oversight, the lack of a designated successor, a decision delayed perhaps by the chairman's confidence in his own health and capacity to lead. The realization that the company needed to plan for the future became urgent. The chairman, having no children, faced a dilemma in choosing his successor. During his recovery, he nominated Ethan, a decision that seemed logical to many within the company who were familiar with Ethan's qualifications and leadership training. However, this decision was not universally accepted, particularly by my in-laws, who saw themselves as more deserving due to their closer familial ties to the chairman. Confronting the chairman during his recovery, they argued that Ethan was too inexperienced and that they were better suited for leadership. The chairman, however, dismissed their claims, asserting that entrusting the company to them would lead to its downfall. He stood by his choice of Ethan, explaining his decision with clarity. This did not quell the discontent. Pressure mounted on Ethan, with some family members insisting he resign in favor of his parents, their requests quickly escalating into threats. Concerns grew that these threats could extend beyond mere professional disputes, potentially endangering us and our children. At first, it was hard to believe they would go to such lengths, but Ethan was convinced. To him, These weren't mere family squabbles. They were signs of a deeper disregard for familial bonds, viewing children merely as means to an end. Comparing our parents, Ethan believed mine were merely opportunistic, hoping to benefit from our success indirectly. In contrast, he saw his own parents as directly manipulative, actively seeking to usurp what wasn't theirs by right. This situation left us contemplating our next steps, considering the safety and future of our family amidst the power struggles and familial tensions. When faced with the dilemma of ensuring our family's safety amidst the turmoil within our extended family, I realized how much I cherished the peaceful and trusting environment we had built. Determined to protect this haven and prevent any harm, Ethan came up with a proactive plan. First, we'll enhance the security around our apartment to deter any potential intruders, Ethan proposed, addressing my growing concerns for our children's safety. And when you're out with the kids, Camila, please be extra cautious. I'll talk to my uncle about hiring a security service to keep a discreet watch over you during your outings. I agreed, understanding the necessity of these measures. From then on, I made it a point to visit crowded places whenever I took the children out. I also began to actively participate in gatherings with other mothers, something I had previously been reluctant to do. I figured being in a group would decrease the likelihood of any harmful attempts against us. Unfortunately, our precautions were not foolproof. During a leisurely day at the park with the children and some friends, a startling incident occurred. A woman, under the guise of a casual passerby, tried to abduct my daughter. Thankfully, a vigilant security guard stationed unobtrusively nearby intervened promptly, thwarting her escape. The woman's identity and motives remained a mystery, but the event was a chilling reminder of the dangers lurking in the world. After this incident, we recognized the importance of being alert to all forms of threats, whether motivated by greed or mere mischief. Yet, an oversight remained my parents. They confronted us unexpectedly in the apartment parking lot one day, just as we returned from shopping. In a panic, I quickly secured the car and attempted to shield my children from what was unfolding. Why are Grandma and Grandpa behaving like this? I'm scared, Mom, my child voiced in fear. With a heavy heart, I cracked the window open slightly to communicate, though I wished for no interaction at all. What do you want? I asked, trying to maintain composure. They requested no, demanded that I persuade Ethan to resign from his potential role as chairman, suggesting it was out of order for someone so young. The air grew tense, and their intentions were clear, especially when my mother brandished something resembling a crowbar. In a swift motion, she shattered the car window, causing chaos inside. Get down, I instructed the kids, pressing the car horn repeatedly to signal for help. The security, ever vigilant, was quick to respond to our distress. This episode was a stark illustration of the lengths some would go to for power and control, showcasing the need for unwavering vigilance and protection in the face of familial greed and ambition. Our resolve to guard our family's safety and harmony had never been stronger. Sure enough, as the commotion outside our car escalated, the sound of security guards rushing towards us filled the air. My parents, realizing they were about to be confronted, hastily retreated, jumping into their car and fleeing the scene. The security team reached us immediately, inquiring about our well-being. "We're okay, Mom," my son assured loudly, despite the chaos and the rain of glass shards that had fallen on us. We decided to head back to our apartment, with the guards kindly escorting us to ensure our safety. The building manager, upon hearing what had transpired, was appalled and promised to reinforce security measures to ward off any further attempts by outsiders. That evening, when Ethan returned home, I recounted the harrowing events. We speculated that my parents had been enticed into this scheme with the lure of influential positions should they succeed in their mission. "It's distressingly clear we're dealing with unscrupulous characters," Ethan concluded, pondering our next steps. The decision was made to seek refuge with Ethan's uncle, at least temporarily, for the safety of our family. In addition, Ethan reached out to Eleanor, believing that there was strength in numbers and hoping her presence would offer additional support. Eleanor agreed without hesitation, underscoring the situation's gravity. Eleanor arrived at our home the next day, having discussed the circumstances with her husband, James, who, despite being tied up with work, promised to investigate further and join us when able. This brief respite allowed us to share a laugh and find some comfort in our togetherness, a fleeting moment of relief amidst the turmoil. However, our situation took a dramatic turn the following day with a phone call from the police, informing us that Ethan's car had been discovered at the bottom of a cliff. The news was shocking, and I struggled to process the implications. At the hospital, the reality of the situation began to sink in, yet it felt surreal. The police had found what appeared to be a suicide note in the car, suggesting Ethan was overwhelmed by the pressure of his expected role within the company. But accepting this narrative was impossible. Ethan had always approached his responsibilities with determination and care. The thought that he might have chosen to end his life was inconceivable to me. Eleanor, sensing my disbelief and distress, stepped in to communicate with the authorities on our behalf. In the days that followed, as we navigated the aftermath of the tragedy, the support of family, both given and received, became our anchor. Despite the uncertainties and the heartbreak of losing Ethan, we were determined to uncover the truth, refusing to accept the initial conclusions drawn by others. The journey ahead was daunting, but we were resolved to face it together, seeking justice and clarity in Ethan's memory. During our journey, I have vague memories of what transpired next. The local television news reported the incident's details were still murky, leaving open the question of whether it was an accident. The finding of a note suggesting suicide made it seem more deliberate. Overwhelmed with frustration, I turned the television off, only to meet the worried gazes of my children. "Mom, when will Daddy be back?" asked my 8-year-old son, with my 5-year-old daughter echoing his sentiment. Both had been on a break from school and kindergarten, a pause for which I was thankful, especially since Eleanor had been our rock during this ordeal. It felt as though a fog had enveloped my mind, distancing me from the present. About a week after the car was discovered, we received an envelope, delivered precisely on a specified date, addressed to me. Eleanor, noticing my bewildered state, handed it over. "It's from Ethan," I realized with a start. My hands shook as I hastily opened it, finding a letter and a key inside. The message instructed to keep its contents secret from our parents, a needless reminder, yet it underscored the seriousness. Ethan had prepared this should anything happen to him, advising me to take whatever was in the specified locker and flee immediately. Eleanor and I exchanged worried looks before acting quickly, packing only essential items and herding the children into Eleanor's car. My vehicle had been out of commission since the incident, and I lacked the confidence to drive a loaner to my uncle's in another state. "Leave the driving to me, but wear a hat and a mask," Eleanor said reassuringly, managing a smile. We drove directly, tension our constant companion, until we reached our safe haven in the next state. Upon our arrival, we were greeted by the sight of Ethan's uncle's house, a sanctuary we hoped would be secure from any lingering threat. After informing Ethan's uncle of our approach, we hurriedly moved from the car to the house, greeted by both the chairman and his wife, who were expecting us. "You've had a long journey," they sympathized, revealing Ethan had made arrangements for our protection and eventual refugee here. Apologies tumbled from me, our predicament leaving us no other choice but to seek their shelter. Inside the grand home, my children marveled at the new surroundings as we were ushered into a living room, radiating calm and warmth. The chairman's wife had snacks brought for the kids, ensuring they stayed close in these uncertain times. Despite the dire circumstances that led us here, their kindness was a beacon of hope, reminding us of the strength found in unity and the unwavering support of family. The topic we were about to delve into was not suitable for the ears of my children. The man in question had long been a source of concern, deemed corrupt at his core. Yet, without a clear-cut reason, we hesitated to ostracize him from our circle, a decision that eventually led to turmoil. "It's not your responsibility, Uncle Hudson," I assured him, acknowledging that both Ethan and I had endured the misfortune of having difficult parents. Delilah, beside us, lamented that perhaps they should have formally taken Ethan into their family much sooner. In a moment of resolve, Uncle Hudson declared, "We need to contact the attorney immediately." His sudden urgency caught me off guard. "Uncle Hudson?" I inquired, to which he firmly expressed his intention to prevent the children from facing a fate similar to Ethan's. Following Ethan's passing, his body was taken to the chairman's home for a private funeral and a commemorative service held by the company. I participated in the ceremony alongside my children, serving as the primary mourner. Disappointingly, my parents also attended, unashamedly occupying seats designated for close family members. Ethan's supervisors and co-workers present at the service were visibly moved, reflecting on his potential and contributions to the company. "Thank you. Ethan would have appreciated your words," I responded, though my heart ached with loss. The deep affection and respect from his colleagues contrasted sharply with the neglect from his own parents. Following the service, the chairman convened a meeting at his residence, inviting family members, in-laws, and company executives. The extensive gardens and halls brimmed with attendees when suddenly James, Eleanor's husband, made a hurried entrance. Apologizing for his delay, he explained his concurrent attendance at both the memorial and the general meeting was a challenge he managed to overcome. With a smile, he presented a set of documents and a USB drive, previously retrieved from a locker Ethan had indicated, which we had asked Jacob to duplicate and send to our lawyer for safety. Ensuring the originals were now safely with us, I affirmed their importance. The general meeting commenced shortly after, with the chairman addressing the attendees about the unfortunate event and the loss of Ethan, who'd been viewed as a future leader within the company. As he concluded his narrative, the chairman was on the verge of introducing a significant new development, signaling a pivotal moment and possibly setting the course for future actions in response to the tragedy. In the wake of a heartbreaking turn of events, the chairman confessed to a regret. He beckoned me and my two children, Wyatt and Kinsley, to come closer. My kids, dwarfed by the surrounding adults, looked terrified, almost to the point of tears. I tried to comfort them with hushed assurances that everything would be okay. The chairman then announced his decision to appoint Wyatt and Kinsley, Ethan's children whom he had adopted, as his new successors. The room filled with murmurs of surprise at his declaration. The news, understandably, shocked many, as the chairman posited that the tragedy unfolded because Ethan was only seen as a nephew, not a son. This statement drew everyone's attention to my in-laws, sparking a tense exchange. Accusations about Ethan's supposed suicide and the pressures he faced were thrown into the conversation, alongside defensive remarks about the newly appointed successors not facing the same pressures because they were now seen as the chairman's grandchildren. In a dramatic turn, the chairman asserted that Ethan did not die by suicide, contradicting the belief that a suicide note had been found. This revelation caused a stir among the attendees. James, then stepping forward, clarified that no such information had been leaked by the police, undermining the assumptions made by some family members about the nature of Ethan's death. Revealing his identity as a detective, Jacob debunked the misinformation circulating about the suicide note and the circumstances of Ethan's death. The shock of his police badge reveals silence to any lingering skepticism, especially from those unaware of his profession. This surprise was a testament to the distance within the family, as even Eleanor remarked on the lack of communication and interest from her family in James's work. Jacob continued, providing crucial details about the investigation into Ethan's car, which had been found at the bottom of a cliff. The police had discovered early on that the brakes had been tampered with, suggesting foul play. He detailed Ethan's actions on the day of the incident, from securing items in a locker to sending a letter to Camila, during which the brake tampering likely occurred. Yet the critical failure of the brakes only manifested later, as Ethan made his way to this house. This unfolding story shifted the narrative from one of presumed personal despair to a chilling account of deliberate sabotage, altering the perspectives of everyone involved and shining a new light on the tragedy that had befallen Ethan. On a road known for its twists and turns, a sinister event unfolded. This road, as many voiced in agreement, was particularly narrow in places, a common trait in less populated areas. Caught in an emergency due to another's reckless driving, Ethan likely discovered too late that his brakes had been sabotaged, leading to his tragic accident. Though the details were initially shared with a sense of vagueness, the underlying truth was unmistakable to all present. James, with a comforting smile, shared that the police had identified the erratic driver through Ethan's dashcam footage, leading to their arrest. The plot thickened when it was revealed that this driver was merely a pawn, a hired individual, and investigations were now focused on finding the person who had employed them. However, Jacob then shifted the focus to Anthony, unveiling a separate issue of embezzlement that had been brewing for years. Ethan had been discreetly gathering evidence on this, which was now being brought to light. As if on cue, projectors illuminated the room, displaying documents and evidence of Anthony's financial misdeeds. The room's atmosphere shifted dramatically as police officers entered to make the arrest, not just for embezzlement, but also for plotting against Ethan. My parents, caught in the web of their actions, attempted to stand, only to be faced with their own set of charges, vandalizing a vehicle in what they dismissively called a family matter. I confronted them, denouncing their actions as unforgivable, especially given the danger they posed to their own grandchild. With resolve, I declared them strangers to me, highlighting the gravity of their betrayal. The aftermath saw my in-laws admitting to their conspiracy against Ethan during their interrogation, leading to additional charges against them. My parents faced consequences for property damage and their complicity in the broader scheme against Ethan. The local media quickly picked up on the scandal, broadcasting the unraveling of a family embroiled in deceit and criminal activities across regional platforms. This revelation marked a turning point, exposing the depth of the treachery and setting the stage for a reckoning that went beyond the personal grief and loss experienced by those closest to Ethan. The community watched as justice began to untangle the complex web of lies and betrayal, promising a closure that was both necessary and long overdue. The shocking crime, with parents at its heart conspiring against their family, captured the nation's attention, becoming a hot topic for news outlets and talk shows alike. In today's digital age, the scandal left an indelible mark on their reputations, forever tarnishing their names online. The consequences of their actions lingered far beyond any potential release from custody, but that was no longer my concern. Since the ordeal, we found a new home in Uncle Hudson's house, welcomed into a space that was now ours. Delilah, Hudson's wife, took a particular shine to my children, showering them with affection, perhaps even more than usual. Her desire for children of her own, unfulfilled, found an outlet in caring for mine, which I viewed as a blessing under the circumstances. The transition was tough for my children, who had to move schools in the midst of dealing with the loss of their father. The guilt of involving them in such adult conflicts weighed on me, yet ensuring their safety justified the move. Meanwhile, the chairman, my children's adoptive grandfather, committed himself to maintaining his health, determined to stay strong for them until they reached adulthood. Our days at Hudson's house are filled with a new routine. "Tea is ready," announces a familiar, comforting rhythm to our lives. I focus on supporting my children and providing company, uncertain of my role but committed to making the most of our situation for their sake. Amidst the upheaval, we strive to build a life filled with as much normalcy and joy as possible, holding on to hope for the future.